I guess another part of why I'm so fascinated about this tournament this summer, because not only does the coach have to perform, but also these players have got to start to show that they're capable of not just being good with their clubs, but being good with the U.S. men's national team.
Hey, everybody. The Airbets podcast is back. I'm your host, the Bear, Chris Fallica, joined by my co-host, Geoff Schwartz. And as he did last week to preview Euro 2024, Stu Holden back with us to preview Copa, which begins on June 20th. So it's a little odd to have these two major tournaments going on at the same time like this, but it's a great time. I mean, people are always worried about NBA playoffs are ending, NHL playoffs are ending, golf majors are in a little bit of a respite. We got the summer of stars here with Euro 2024 and Copa America going at the same time. So, Stu, certainly no lack of excitement and expectations for this tournament.
Yeah, the only bummer from a completely selfish standpoint is that it means that I can't be in two places at one time. So I will be working the first week of the Euros, and then I'll be doing the Copa America, which, by the way, I'm beyond excited about, because really, this is the first, if you're looking for a reason to care about this as a general sports fan and you support U.S. soccer and you love seeing them in the World Cup, this is really the best chance you're going to have to see them playing against teams in a format and in a big tournament that's going to feel like the World Cup will in 2 years from now. And really what I'm excited about was that we got excited about this team in 22, but now this is the time to figure out if this team is for real, if they can actually make some noise against Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, all these great teams. And hey, by the way, you might have heard of a guy called Lionel Messi. You heard of him, Bear? He's pretty good. He's going to be playing for Argentina.
Stu, I'm going to be with Bear a little bit this summer. I have to watch some sports with him, what I know you've done before. How's Bear during a soccer match? Like, is he quiet? Is he going to yell? Is he going to scream? Like, how do I watch soccer with Bear?
You know, Bear is amazing. Like, he just kind of sat in the corner in our green room in Sydney, and like we would sit there and talk from across the room, and he's on his laptop typing away, and then like he just casually at the end of the game was like, "Oh yeah, I had Spain under 3 goals and U.S. to win by 2, and I just hit a like 4-leg parlay or something," but without mentioning anything until it's done. I mean, I was parading around the room telling everybody every bet that we had going on. And he's just like the silent assassin in the corner.
I feel bad in admitting this now, and it means I did do a very good job, because I think part of the reason why I might have been a little subdued and a little quiet at times, and maybe you could be called a little bit of a happiness hedge or not, I did have Sweden to advance against the U.S. in the knockout round. So I kind of had to just sit there and
see. I'm curious how as a, you know, not as frequent and as much of a betting insider as you guys, how often are you balancing, you know, personal like rooting interest versus your money? And like how often do you end up in a situation where you're not often, you just avoid those?
I did it in that situation because I knew the stakes of the match for all of us involved there and how badly we really needed the U.S. to get through. And unfortunately they didn't. And so at least on the end, it was like, okay, I cashed a ticket, but it still kind of stunk to the way that match ended.
Bear doesn't like America.
I was gonna say, did you have to like wear a disguise to go cash that ticket? Like, did you have like hair? Did you have hair on or something?
Here's what I do, Stu. I'm an Oregon Duck fan. That's the team that I like. You know, I like the Lakers too. I don't know. I'm not watching them. The Giants in baseball. It's hard to bet on baseball all the time. I will not bet on Oregon to cover a spread as an underdog. So I don't want that feeling of like, oh, they didn't win, but they covered the game. I won money. Never. I only wager on Oregon. Bear knows this. When they're the favorite. Like, I want them to win by 3 points or more. Even if they win, I lose my wager, but you know, if it's 3 points or less. So that's the only time I do that. In any sport, Chiefs, same way. I'm only betting on the Chiefs if they're the favorite. Otherwise, I'm not taking the points. I'm not doing it because that to me feels like not a fun way to watch a game. Like, hope your team loses by a certain amount of points. Like, no, I'm out on that.
Yeah. And I guess I'm fascinated by this. So my last question on that is, do you ever feel that your your rooting interests cause you to be persuaded into a bet that perhaps you may not have. Because I'm only speaking from personal experience here, where like I was still thinking of, I went to Clemson, so I'm a Clemson guy, and every time that they're like getting points last year, I was like, I'm taking Clemson, and they like kept blowing it, and I was thinking, man, maybe we're not as good as we're supposed to be, and maybe I should stop putting money on them.
So somehow you lost to Miami last year just by dominating that game, and that was just an unbelievable. Miami had zero threat to throw the ball, and somehow they wound up winning that game in overtime. So that was
crazy.
Yeah, ACC football at its finest. But let's get back to the football at hand here. You mentioned the U.S. and people getting excited about U.S. Like just a couple of like I'm gonna throw all of my big picture like thoughts and questions that I had for you in one question, and you can take it now and run however you want. Like how do you ultimately think Berhalter is going to use Reyna? Do you think he's going to use him as like the number 10? How big is the Dest injury? And is this the more of like, yeah, of course you want to win and of course you want to go far, but isn't this more of like a dress rehearsal for 2026 in the World Cup when we host?
I think it's a dress rehearsal in the way that we are going to ultimately end up judging this team. And I think what it does, it sets realistic expectations. So I don't think the team is looking at this as, you know, hey, we've got to do this in order to do this in 26, because they've already qualified for the 2026 right. World Cup. And so for them, it's like, this is really our opportunity to find out just how good we may be or can be, or how good we are now and how much room do we have for improvement. So it's really beyond hypothetical conversation from all of us about, well, in this friendly and they did this and they beat Mexico. Like we've been rinsing Mexico now consistently for the past couple of years. But the big question has always been, can you beat an England? Can you beat a Germany? Can you beat Brazil? Can you beat Colombia? Can you beat a real team to get to a serious part of a competition? And that's why I'm excited, and I don't really want to call this like a dress rehearsal. I want to see this U.S. team really try and win this competition. And then let's go into the team. I mean, look, this is as big, I think, for Greg Berhalter as it is for these players, because he was hired under, or rehired, I should say, under some, you know, slightly interesting circumstances. They had every opportunity to go a different way. They still identified and said, this is our guy. He is the best guy to lead this group of players, which many have dubbed the golden generation. I think to be a golden generation, you have to win something. So I think the U.S. has to perform and do something that no other team in the U.S. history has done before. We've been to semifinals of the Copa America. We've done a lot of this. So that should be really the baseline expectation. Now, you mentioned too, Bear, Serginho Dest. I think I'm interested to see, like, what does Greg Berhalter do without one of his best defenders? I think it actually gives you an opportunity to play with one less true defender and play with more attacking players, which then would free up Gio Reyna to play as a number 10. And I always feel like for the U.S. to be really successful at a high level, we need guys that just have something a little bit different and can make plays that can win you games. That's Gio Reyna, that's Christian Pulisic, that's Tim Weah. Like, I want all these guys on the field. So in order to do that, you got to lose a player somewhere else in the field, and I think that's potentially a defender, and you can rebalance the team in a way that you play attacking. But as I look at the U.S. and I think about, you know, trying to handicap and predict and, you know, how far they're going to go, I expect them to get through their group with Uruguay quite comfortably. It's Panama and Bolivia you'd have to beat. And then it's Colombia or Brazil. And those are two pretty big powerhouse teams. And I like the U.S.'s chances against Colombia more than I do against Brazil. But then Colombia just recently beat Brazil in World Cup qualifying in South America. So like all these teams are really, really high level at that point.
I'm always fascinated by the way U.S. sports fans and U.S. media kind of go after U.S. soccer sometimes. How do you think that those interactions are on social media? Because they get very angry. Is angry the right word to do? Frustrated? It just seems like social media goes after this men's soccer team more than they do other teams.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. I guess I see it across if I peel it out, you see that in like little pockets everywhere. I probably see it way more than anybody because my pocket of social media is all of these guys and all U.S. soccer. And if we win, we're going to win the World Cup. And if we lose, everybody needs fired and cut and is off the team. Yeah, I think it's actually one of the greatest challenges for an athlete these days is to be able to cut through the noise and realize like what's real and what's not and who you're getting your opinions from. But this team, I think, has been in this position, Jeff, because there's an overwhelming sentiment and belief that this is one of the best generations we've ever had. So in order for that to be proven false, first, the coach would be gone and it would be like, well, it's his fault. So it would like take a high profile European coach to come in and fail with this team. And then everybody to say, oh, it's actually the players. So that's, I guess, another part of why I'm so fascinated about this tournament this summer, because not only does the coach have to perform, but also these players have got to start to show that they're capable of not just being good with their clubs, but being good with the U.S. men's national team and realizing that like, the status quo is kind of what everybody has done for the past 25 years. And in order to go from good to great, they've got to do something meaningful in this tournament in 2026. And how do you handle pressure and expectation, not from just the social media vacuum that's going to hate you and love you no matter what, but really to those that, look at this team and say, hey, we've got a good 12, 13 guys that are very, very high level. And let's see what we can do.
So the U.S. reaches the final if?
The U.S. reaches the final. Wow. Well, if the U.S. reaches the final, if Christian Pulisic is able to play at the level that he played for AC Milan this year, if Gio Reyna is the Gio Reyna that we've seen with the U.S. men's national team, and the biggest one of all of these is if we have a goal scorer that steps up and really is a high-level player that like Balogun or Sargent or Haji Wright. Like that was the big thing missing in Qatar. Midfield was so good. Defense played really well. Matt Turner had a great tournament. Pulisic was good. We just didn't have anybody that was consistently putting the ball in the back of the net or, in and around the box in dangerous positions. So if the U.S. reached the final, it's because somebody like Balogun has achieved the potential that I think a lot of us believe he has, and we've seen in flashes, but does it in a consistent basis and then does it against a Brazil and Colombia, because you're going to have to beat one of those, if not both, to get to a final. So that's what's going to really propel the U.S. to the next level.
For you, what is a successful U.S. run in Copa? Is it getting to the quarter, semifinals? Is it? You mentioned kind of style of play, preparing for the World Cup. What do you see as a success? Like you'll come out and be like, yeah, we didn't win. Well, obviously you win, but like we didn't win, but I liked how they played.
Yeah, I guess I'm constantly torn between. I love the way the U.S. team played in Qatar because we played against an England team that many people thought were going to get to a final. They actually outplayed France and lost. And look, the U.S. played them off the field that day for long stretches. They just couldn't score. So I'm torn between would I rather the U.S. team play well and play like they did against England or just win the game? I'd actually rather us win the game, but at whatever cost. I don't really care how we do it. But when it comes to judging the Copa America, I think the semifinal is a realistic expectation for this team, for the U.S. men. But also, I wouldn't be completely distraught and disheartened and, happy fingers on the keyboard on social media if the U.S. played against Brazil and played this unbelievable game and played with the ball and bossed Brazil off the game, but yet we lost in penalty kicks or something. And that just kind of happens sometimes in knockout soccer. So I guess I could be convinced that we had a good tournament if we, played lights out against Brazil, but lost from a fluky play or a penalty and lost in penalty kicks. But I would like to see us get to a semifinal. I think that would really get me excited about the next 2 years and thinking about what this team could really do in 2026.
The handicapper in me just wants to take the best possible price I can on Argentina to win the tournament. You look, they're in the top half of the draw, which is the easier half. You're going to have Ecuador, Mexico, and Chile there. Like if you get them at plus money to win the tournament, like whatever they are, plus 175, 180 around there, just put that in pocket. They're in the final. They'll be favored over whoever they face from the bottom. So basically, you're kind of naming your profit and name on the other side. So, that's got to be. Is that a good strategy? A bad strategy? Did you see any way that Argentina don't reach the final?
Oh boy. Look, I think the only team really capable when I look at Group A and Group B, Argentina's in Group A, Peru, Chile, Canada, they should run through that group quite comfortably. And then they're playing probably Mexico or Ecuador. Ecuador, a sneaky good team, young at the World Cup, one of the younger teams, and ended up underachieving, I think, from based on expectations for them. They've got a little bit of that X factor that I don't see Mexico in their current form being able to beat Argentina and Lionel Messi. So to your point, Bear, if I'm handicapping them, I don't know what the numbers are on Argentina reaching the final. We just laid out the numbers for them to win the Copa America at 175. Even that feels, like a pretty good bet between them and Brazil if you're taking both of them pre-tournament and then being able to potentially, take some off the table or go a little heavier as those two teams go. But yeah, I just don't see if it's Ecuador against Argentina in a semifinal or Argentina against Mexico, even with what Mexico would have as a home field advantage. Lionel Messi and Lautaro Martinez, it's still Rodrigo de Paul, Nico Gonzalez. I mean, they just still have the big guys from the World Cup, and then now this kind of next group is being brought along, and still Messi's going to do what Messi's going to do. So
they're minus 135 to reach the final, which really isn't that bad of a bet. That's not a ton of juice to be laying to win two matches just to get to the final. You hit on Messi, and we kind of touched on it a little bit last week with Cristiano Ronaldo. Like, I guess for the lack of a better word, like, what's the state of Messi? Like, is he health, form? Is he now just a 16-minute player? Can he play the full 90 if he needs to? Do they still go through him? Or is it now like Lautaro Martinez and Nico Gonzalez and Garnacho and Julian Alvarez? Like, is it their team now and Messi's kind of just along for the ride? Or am I over-exaggerating that a little bit?
If Messi's on the field, it's Messi's team. Like and that'll be a different conversation, I think, come 2026 and seeing what he looks like then, because you did mention briefly one of the potential X factors here when we're talking about Messi winning the Golden Boot at plus 330. It's that he's had a couple of injuries this year already. And, Miami have played a lot of games. They had the CONCACAF Champions Cup. There's a lot of travel that he really hasn't experienced in his career before. Only got from the summer onwards, probably a longer offseason than he's ever had in his career this last offseason. And he's probably a player also that's just been used to his entire career, go, 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 go. And then all of a sudden when you take your foot off the gas a little bit and you're not playing as such a high intensity and you're going from MLS now into international games, I think there's a little bit of an X factor and a realistic worry that, maybe he picks up a knock or Scaloni and Argentina are a little bit more protective with his minutes, and he's not playing every single minute of every single game like he did in the World Cup. I mean, that guy, you would have had a hard time getting him off the field at any moment. I think he might have played almost every single minute off the top of my head. So I could see him against, in their last group game, maybe resting a couple of minutes at the end and making sure that he's fully raring to go on the quarters, the semis, and the type of turnaround. They've got a good chunk between the quarters and the semis. It's about 5 days and then another 5-6 days before the final. So I wouldn't be worried about him at that stage of the tournament, but this is still Messi's team. And if you're talking about Golden Boot as well, I would be looking at somebody from Brazil. I think Vinicius Jr. hasn't quite had his big moment in the Brazil shirt. And something to think about is that Neymar is not going to be a part of this tournament. He has always been the focal point of the Brazilian attack. And if you can get somebody now that's going to step up, whether that's Vinicius or Rodrigo, I think you could get some good value there. So there's a reason he's not that much longer odds than Lionel Messi at plus 380.
Brazil lost 3 straight World Cup qualifiers. Any concern for you about them heading in this tournament?
I had a lot of concern about Brazil up until I think the last couple of games. Now they've changed their coach. Dorival Jr. is a really well-respected and successful coach in Brazil, has achieved a lot. His first game was against England at Wembley and against an England team that hadn't lost a match in 20-plus games. Well, what did they do? They won 1-0, and Endrick, kind of the new young star for Brazil, scored a goal. So he's another one to actually consider. Maybe he becomes an X factor in the Copa America as well. I forgot about him potentially in the Golden Boot race. But I'm more bullish on Brazil than I was a couple of months ago. it was so unrecognizable from Brazil in qualifying to lose the games that they've lost. They lost at home to Argentina for the first time in World Cup qualifier. And it was like everything in Brazil was just burning down. I mean, like, talk about an overreaction from U.S. soccer standpoint. Imagine what that was like from Brazil. The golden Brazilian soccer samba was dying a slow death. I think they've still got a little bit of fight, and if they're going to show it, it's going to be here in the Copa America. So I still like Brazil, at least in a semi. Like, we shouldn't expect ever anything less from Brazil.
I'm glad you did mention Vinny Jr. because I don't think he gets the recognition worldwide that he really deserves. He's a great player, and maybe it's because he hasn't done anything on the club, the international stage. Like, won 2 Champions League, scored Champions League final this year, scored Champions League final against Liverpool. Like, maybe it ultimately is his time to shine, and maybe Brazil does wind up winning this tournament. I want to like Uruguay. I want to like them to reach the final. Help me get there or help me not get there.
Uruguay are so unpredictably predictable, I guess. They have a coach in Marcelo Bielsa who, is like a legendary coach of the game, and he's well known for just playing this high octane, crazy, end-to-end, high pressing, attacking, really fun to watch. And they would be a fun team to watch. They will be a fun team to watch in this tournament, and are doing sensationally well right now under him in World Cup qualifying. They had a great result against Argentina and against Brazil as well. They have Darwin Nunez, who I know you love, Bear, who's just this.
Speaking of high energy and high octane.
Yeah, exactly. 6'4", flies around, can score goals, is fast, like plays to this style really well. So I can see a way. I mean, they're plus 600. There's a pretty reasonable way for them to get to that final. One of the things I'm interested to see too is, look, they're in the group with the U.S., but by the time they both play in that third game, probably they've both won their first 2 games against Panama and Bolivia, and you're thinking about placement, and they're not going to know who they're going to play between Brazil and Colombia until the next day. So do they rest players? Do they not? Do they care about who and where they're going to play? But they could easily beat Brazil and Colombia in a quarterfinal, and they're pretty tough match for Argentina as well. So I can see a way in which this Uruguayan team gets to a final and could win it as well.
You already have me writing down when USA and Uruguay play 0-0, draw detector. Under all of that stuff. Let's have a
Bear's
nice
gonna be rooting for
90 minutes of kicking the ball around, nobody get hurt.
Live on Fox.
He's going to fade us again, Stu. He's going to fade the United States again. Who's the Albania bet? I know the numbers I don't think are up yet to finish last in their group, but who's that bet where you're laying the big number on someone to knock out of the to finish last of their group?
Oh boy. I would go between Costa Rica and Bolivia. I think Bolivia are a pretty sure bet. Bolivia just played in a friendly last week against Mexico, but it was Mexico's U23s, and they lost that game. They consistently just get trucked in CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying. Like, their first game is against the U.S. in Arlington, so that'll be one to watch. Really going to set the tone potentially for the U.S. And then, then they play Uruguay and Panama. So, yeah, I'm going with Bolivia to get trucked, and then I would go with Los Ticos in Costa Rica to be our Albania of the Euros.
Is it a given Mexico gets out of Group B? Pause.
Yeah, it's not. Look, I actually was ahead of the Mexico thing, not to pat myself on the back, which I just did, but I picked them not to get out of the group in Qatar in 2022. I've not seen great signs from them recently, and then Jamaica, if the potential that they have for a roster at this Copa America, they have tons of really high experienced Premier League guys. They can be a problem. Venezuela's having a really good, sneaky good CONMEBOL qualifying campaign right now. They've got a great striker in Salomon Rondon. And then Ecuador, I talked about how much I like Ecuador. There's a way Mexico doesn't get out of the group. Absolutely. Like, I wouldn't think that that's a cert, even with what they're probably going to be the best supported team of any team at the Copa America. They're going to have a huge home field advantage. So they probably do, but I'm not putting money on that. No way.
So do you ultimately think we're headed towards Argentina, Brazil in the final?
I think Argentina, Brazil. Yeah, I think Argentina, Brazil. Would love to see the U.S. get there. I laid out the reasons why I think the U.S. could. But look, Vinny Jr., Rodrigo, Endrick, even the defense that Brazil is going to roll out, some of the best goalkeepers in the world. I just think it's a team that's been underperforming in World Cup qualifying, but with a new coach. And also, look, like for them, this is setting the tone and setting the stage for the next 2 years in the lead up to the World Cup in 26, but also for them to even qualify to get there, which sounds crazy, but they will qualify and they'll get there. And let's remember who won the last World Cup in '94 here in the United States. That was Brazil. They've pretty historically done well in our country, and I could see them doing well here again and getting to a final against Argentina.
Well, we certainly look forward to the next 6 weeks or so. You and John Strong do a great job. We're just looking forward to working with and listening to you on all those calls. Stu Holden, appreciate your time. Have a great Summer of Stars.
I appreciate it, boys. And Bear, if I find out you're fading the U.S., then we're in trouble, man.
No. There's nothing wrong. It will be 0-0. It will be under. I will not be
okay. That's fine.
Don't worry about it. I will not be betting the U.S. to lose in the third one. It sounds like one of those perfect final group stage matches where it ultimately doesn't really matter.
And Jeff, you keep me posted on you getting all your buddies involved in the soccer bubble here. All right, you know.
I mentioned this before we got started, man. I am all for entertainment and gambling, and both of those things are happening in these two tournaments. I will be watching it. I'll be gambling. I'll get that text every morning from Bear about who he's taking, the random wagers. It makes it more fun, more enjoyable. And again, I'm all for entertaining sports, and I can't wait to watch this.
Let's go. Thanks, boys.
Copa getting underway real soon. Thanks to Stu Holden for joining us. Maybe add a little Darwin Nunez golden boot in there too for Copa, because we talked about Messi and how he's probably not a good bet there. So maybe throw a little Darwin Nunez. I think he's around 6-1 for Uruguay. Maybe that's the Liverpool fan coming out at me right there. But it's just going to be. I'm so looking forward to being out in LA for 5 weeks, just covering both of these events and being around everybody that loves the sport like I do and have played it obviously at such a super high level. So thanks, Stu, and hopefully we'll have some pearls of wisdom there that will manifest and pay out and pan out. But speaking of manifesting and panning out and paying out, this weekend, the UFL Championship game, Birmingham, a 3-point favorite over San Antonio. Jeff, did that number surprise you that it was that low?
Yeah, it did. Look, I know they played, 2 weeks ago now, and San Antonio beat them, I believe it was 18-9. But that was a time of year when Birmingham, their fate was sealed, right? They were the 1 seed. They hadn't lost in over a year and a half, Bear. Like they were due for a loss. San Antonio was still sort of battling to get themselves either the 1 or 2 seed on the XFL side. So I'm surprised to see this number so low. But I think it's because San Antonio's defense, Bear, is really freaking good. Since week 3, I wrote it down. They've allowed 9, 15, 18, 12, 15, 9, 13, and 15. I mean, it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think that's why they went with the +3 here, right? Because if you go any higher than that in a low-scoring game, you're probably going to get a lot of people hammering that plus number. So I was a tad surprised when you dig into the defense San Antonio plays. It makes a little more sense.
And I think if you narrow it down to the last 3 weeks when they played St. Louis twice and then Birmingham to combine 31 points by the opponent's opposing offenses. So that's and Wade Phillips, obviously, we know him from his NFL days as well, that he always was viewed as a great defensive mind, one of the better defensive coordinators in the league. And certainly it seems like he's put together a really good unit in San Antonio that he held Adrian Martinez to 56 rush yards and 278 total yards for the Stallions in that game. Like, do we even know what's going on at the quarterback position now? Because we saw Birmingham sloppy with the football, 4 turnovers. Corral came in, and I guess the best part about that game for Birmingham was how well their defense played in the second half, and even after the Panthers took that 15-point lead, because they'd kind of been struggling. John Chavis left because of a health issue, and it seems like at least their defense got right late in that game. Now, if they can eliminate the turnovers, that's probably a different story depending on what they do at quarterback.
Well, that third quarter was wild, right? It was something like interception, 2 fumble recoveries, and 3 other interceptions bear in that third quarter alone, which was a wild quarter for both teams. I would imagine Martinez is back. I mean, I think he was taken out for a little bit he got beat up in that one fumble, right? He got tackled in that sack fumble. Look, I think the best part about what we saw from Birmingham, they were down 18-3 and won 31-18. I mean, they outscored Michigan by 28 points. Unfortunately, if you had Michigan +6, that's a pretty bad beat for you. I think you feel like you're up 18-3, you have a chance there. I think the question for this game comes down to, is Birmingham going to be able to move the ball? Because they're better at quarterback, which is hugely important, in any sort of championship game. They're better on offense, right? They score more points. They move the ball easier. San Antonio, we talked about defensively, great, but offensively, they're just okay, right? Chase Garbers is Pac-12 legend. I guess now he's an ACC legend. Is ACC legend now?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, by default, it's like when like the Big Ten Network shows like classic Nebraska games. I'm like, Nebraska's not. Like, why are you showing like a 1994 Nebraska-Colorado game like on Big Ten? Like they were like Big 8 school, Big 8, Big 12. So it's like it's funny how like these teams now move into a different conference. But yeah, I guess we can loosely interpret Garbers as an ACC legend. I will say this about the San Antonio offense: like they play complementary really well because Anthony McFarland is on a run right now. He got hurt initially in that one Birmingham game. He kind of nicked his shoulder, but he's been fantastic. Since he came back from injury, like 125 yards a game, like that helps keep that Birmingham offense off the field. So look, we've talked at length about how we have Birmingham futures and going anywhere from like plus 125 to 155 or 170 or so to win this league. But I've seen enough now. That slow start last week really had to be worried. And remember, if Michigan maybe goes for it a couple of times in fourth down instead of for some field goals, maybe we're not having this conversation today. So I am absolutely taking the 3 for probably half of my my potential wings here. And if I get lucky and catch a middle, or maybe Birmingham wins by 1 or 2 or 3, or maybe if I can buy it up to 3.5 somewhere, I can do that. But I am absolutely if you would have said maybe midway through the season or when we accumulated these bets, am I going to hedge off of this at some point or try for a middle? I probably would have said, yeah, maybe for a little bit. But I think I'm shocked to be saying this, but I think San Antonio here, sitting here as we're recording before this game gets going, I think San Antonio has a great chance to win this game. So I'm taking San Antonio plus the 3. If I can find a way to get 3.5, I will.
The rule of thumb, right, is when you middle, you do basically a half unit, right? So if you have a full unit on Birmingham to win outright, which we do at plus money, so it's a good wager, then just take the middle at plus 3. That's what I'm going to do. Haven't done it yet. I need to get back to a legal sports wagering state there to make this happen, I believe, the way I want to do it. So I think I land on Sunday in time, Bear, to put this wager in, but it will be a St. Louis plus 3. I think, excuse me, San Antonio plus 3. And I legitimately think San Antonio can win this game. Like, it's not just a middle because I have the Birmingham future. The way they're playing on defense, the way they played the last month or so, with Birmingham sputtering a little bit, hasn't looked the same the last month as well. So I think San Antonio can certainly win this game outright, but the middle is what I'm playing for as well.
Yeah, I would agree. It was so funny this past weekend to be up at Saratoga, being on the desk during the Belmont show, and races were still going. The pre-races were going on, and the Birmingham Michigan game was going on Saturday afternoon. So I had it up on my laptop, and one of the executives from Fox who came up on the set to say hello, and he looks at me and he's like, because you have to be the only person in the world right now watching the UFL on a laptop and watching Saratoga horse racing as well. So I kind of have that as my badge of honor for the rest of my life now. UFL and horse racing at the same time. So
we were texting about the game because you guys had Michigan plus 6. And I was worried about my Birmingham future. We were watching the game. I mean, like,
and remember, I had talked about maybe taking Michigan earlier in the week. And, I mean, because of the schedule and being on the set and rehearsing, all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, the game has started, and I missed. And Michigan scored early, so I missed my opportunity to get down and get. So we always say sometimes the adage is the best bets you make are the ones you don't make, and it kind of worked out for me missing the start of the game because obviously my potential middle there or hedge on Michigan would have lost. So
got was Saratoga.
Saratoga is awesome. It's my favorite track to go to. It's the best racing. It was a gorgeous day, but unfortunately did not have the winner. I'm going to share this story for people here, and I haven't done it anywhere else. I was gonna tweet it out and take screen grabs, but it was so funny because earlier in the week, last Wednesday, let me try and find here we go. Last Wednesday, I get a text message from my buddy, a guy by the name of Brett Wiener, who is an NHC champion, great handicapper. So on Wednesday, he texts me and says, "Hey, you doing the Belmont?" Blah 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 blah. And we go on. He goes, mile and a quarter at Saratoga, usually won by speed. You think that fast pace, but every time they get the lead and they hold, every time. Just looked at the race. I have to go with Dornoch. 7, 8, and 9 don't break. So he's going to get away smooth and probably be in the lead. If the 1 goes, who sees the gray, which he did, he can probably sit. If the 10 goes outside him, maybe he can take Holden second, which he did. Many good options. And I go, of course, I hate that horse. He hasn't gotten any better from 2 to 3. I think he's more likely to finish last than first.
So it didn't go well for you on Sunday.
In other words, always listen to the Hall of Famer and not me. So my buddy Brett was all over Dornick, and I got to give him a ton of credit.
As soon as Sierra Leone got hit out the gate, that was it. You knew immediately once there was a little bit of contact. Bear felt like that was the end of our wager, and there was contact a second time down the stretch. You're like, there we go. That's not going to happen.
But it was a great day nonetheless, and and I said to Jonathan Kinchin on the set and Carissa after the race, this is kind of why we do it, because you have a $40 horse in the Derby, you got a $20-something horse in the Preakness, you got another $40 horse in the Belmont. If you hit one of them, you had a great Triple Crown, and we had Mystic Dan in the Derby, so we had a great Triple Crown, regardless of the fact that we only had one of the 3 winners in the sequence. So you're there for the score, and we didn't have the score on Saturday, but other people did, and we had a score in the Derby, and other people didn't. And it's good, and that's why everybody has different interpretations of the form, and everybody reads the races differently. So congrats to those who did have Dornick. Now, speaking of favorites, and we were on the favorite Saturday at Saratoga, Scotty Scheffler plus 300 to win the U.S. Open.
Yes.
I mean, usually you hate playing someone plus 300 in a 72-hole golf event, but you could be looking up on Thursday afternoon, and by that point, maybe he's like plus 150, depending on everything else. It's hard. It's going to be fast. The greens are going to be bad, but while that's his kind of bugaboo, but putting, and he was terrible with the flat stick on Sunday at Memorial, he still won. The fact that the greens are going to be so hard and firm and difficult, I think that helps him. The harder the course, the better for him. When people can't take advantage of the greens, the great putters, their strength is mitigated. I think that only helps Scheffler. So, I mean, I did play Scheffler at plus 300 to win, just because you don't know if the price is going to go the other way or not.
It's probably not. And, I know that people love this term like value, right? And they think that value is taking the longest shot possible to win. Well, I think value is betting the best golfer in the world at plus money. I mean, that's, to me, plus 300 is still 3 to 1. I mean, you're still getting a plus money number here to take the best golfer in the world. And you're right. Look, if he starts fast, that number is immediately gone. If he starts slow, you can wait it out and maybe take a better number as it goes on. But the question is, who do you feel most comfortable winning this if not Scheffler? And the answer comes back to I'll just take Scheffler, right? Who do you feel great about? I mean, there's some names DeChambeau at plus 2,000, I think, is a decent wager I'm going to make. Colin Morikawa, not a bad wager. I'm never betting on Rory, I think, ever again until he wins anything. I mean, there's some wagers I like, Bear, but the best golfer in the world at plus 300 is the best bet to make right now.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Morikawa. He couldn't make a putt on Sunday either.
No.
He was right there with an opportunity to beat Scheffler. And he's, if you asked people, I think right now, who would you pick if it's not going to be Scheffler? I think people would say Morikawa, because he kind of had that tough 22-23, but he's been in the top 4 in 3 straight events. He was also third at the Masters. This is a course where you're going to need to be in the fairway and give yourself a shot at par every hole. I mean, the fact that he's a great iron player, he should probably take big numbers out of play. You can get him to finish top 10, I think, right around 150 or so. So he's a guy commonly mentioned. If you're going to play someone other than Scheffler, it could be him. I know a lot of people, you mentioned DeChambeau. I know he's won the U.S. Open, but I worry that this isn't one of those courses where you can bomb it away, and then if it goes awry, you can just chip out of the rough. You're so far up to the green, like he won up at Winged Foot. Like, this is a little different setup, so I'm not sure if this course is going to be one of his kind of courses where he can kind of play that strategy. That being said, if you're in like these fantasy leagues or these golf pools, this is basically your last chance to use him because he's not going to obviously be part of the FedEx Cup. So keep that in mind as your strategy as well. The other guy I used to potentially win was Oberg. I know he was the runner-up at the Masters. He kind of hurt at the PGA and wound up missing the cut. It's his first U.S. Open, but he showed at Augusta that he's someone who's up to the challenge. He went in the water, what was it, on 10, I think it was, or 11, and then battled back. He did not go anywhere. He finished top 5 at Memorial last week. He kind of has the makeup to be able to win one of these big events. So I think he's a viable option. You mentioned Rory. I wouldn't play Rory to win, but he's got 5 straight top 10s in this event. And then he's got to win in a couple other top 10s. Like, I would just play Rory to finish in the top 10. The U.S. Open is almost as much of a physical grind. Well, it's more of a mental grind than a physical grind. And the fact he enjoys the grind, he enjoys that process. He'll be right. He'll be there on Sunday. He probably won't win, but he'll be sitting there at even or +1. Would anticipate maybe +4, +5, or not +4, -4, maybe being the winning score because it's got to play so tough. But I Rory top 10 is something that I like as well.
I keep wanting to get behind Brooks Koepka, and he keeps not delivering. He won the PGA Championship last season. Since then, he's finished 17, 64, 45, and 26 in the next 4 majors. I keep wanting to go back there to any sort of his wagers, but I feel like I can't right now. I don't know what would make me feel any differently about him being a top 20 finisher in this tournament.
The one thing I would say to combat that, and I may add a little bit of Brooks here. I haven't added anything yet. Is that either. The harder the course, the better. Like Valhalla it played as a pitch and putt. The Open last year, Brian Harlan went ridiculously low. Like, these types of courses, I think, are the tests Brooks likes. When the winning score is -4 or -5 or even lower than that, Brooks is another guy that enjoys the grind. So we could see, as long as he's healthy, look, he's won a couple of U.S. Opens, he's won a couple of PGAs, like he's built for an event like this. So I'm probably going to hop in here with the best price I can find on Brooks as well.
Man, the no legal sports wagering here in California really just
you need to find yourself a quick flight to Phoenix.
Just go to Arizona real quick. Just put my wagers in.
Just literally, find a cheap flight to Phoenix. Give yourself like a 2.5, 3 hour layover. Don't even leave the airport. Just stay there, and just sit in the gate area and fire, and then fly back to LA.
I still have my offshores, but I feel like it's just like putting money to an account that you're never going to use. I don't know. I don't like it, Bear. I have to suffer here in poor California. Okay. to get this to do this podcast. But no, I like what you're thinking. The other one I thought, Dustin Johnson missed the cut is plus 150. It doesn't feel like he's just checked out. I mean, like he's made some cuts, recently. I think I have right here. He's missed the cut in 2 of his last 3 majors. He's played well in U.S. Opens in previous years, though. This is a little different because, as you mentioned, the course is so difficult, and the course is so different, right, than a lot of other courses that we see these golfers on. So, plus 150 to miss the cut, I made that play.
Yeah, I like that, and there are a couple of guys here that I think we're going to see some massive names to miss the cut. I think if you look at a player like Patrick Cantley, who is not in form, he's around plus 160 to miss the cut. Max Homa, plus 175 to miss the cut. Another guy, he's played 5 U.S. Opens. He's missed the cut in 4 of them. Robert McIntyre, who won a couple of weeks back. This might not be a course that he plays well on. We're going to get some big names and some recent winners here, I think, that wind up missing the cut. And I think one of the worst things to do is look at last year's U.S. Open and try and translate that to this year's. LACC was ridiculously easy last year. It was not an open course. We've already seen the guy who won there last year, Wyndham Clark, are already complaining about the greens. They're borderline playable. This is going to be a hot, hard, fast course. We're going to see some carnage, and it's going to be great.
Can confirm hot in the Carolinas. Not currently there, but can confirm it's been hot in the Carolinas, and it's been pretty dry too. So you mentioned the really hard greens. We've not seen a lot. We saw a lot of rain in the spring, but as it's kind of turned to summer, we've seen a little bit less of it. So it's like a 2-hour drive for me. I was going to go on Wednesday. My buddy is good. My neighbor is good friends with Kitayama. He's going to have me come out Wednesday to see the Pro-Am, but not in town. That would have been fun to see. I've been to a major before when the PGA was in Charlotte a couple years back. I know it's coming back in 25. I can't do like the actual golf tournament. It is way too boring for my brain. I did practice was a ton of fun, Bear. The Pro-Am sounds fun because I would be sort of in the following him around and being in that crew. But I don't know how people do it. Like just sit on a hole for 8 hours. It ain't my cup of tea, man.
Yeah. You have that option and just kind of stick the PGA Tour radio in your ear, or you follow a group throughout, and it's a lot of walking. You're shuffling for position. Well, my buddy was at Muirfield on Sunday, and he texted me right away. He just plopped down with his dad on 18, and this is at 11:30 in the morning or so. He was like, the number of birdies that are going to be made today on 18, I can count on one hand, and I'm going to have a few fingers left over to spare. And so like, if you're there and you can see that, and you can play hole by hole, like players to make par or worse or whatever, like player to make bogey, like you can capitalize on that. So there is a wagering edge that you can capture by being basically holed up, for lack of a better word, at a hole. I love watching the telecast because I like knowing what's going on around the course and seeing shots. Yeah. So I see it both ways. And yeah, I was at Pinehurst in 2014 when Martin Keimer ran away with the title. It was over after 36 holes. It was brutally hot that week, and I think Ricky Fowler might have been runner-up that year as well. So it's a great course. It's going to bring a bunch of different players into contention based on what driving ability, shot making, putting, chipping. So it's going to be a very fair test of golf. Speaking of a fair test, we have any fair tests that we want to pass and give along as our best bet? You have a best bet for us, whether it's in UFL, US Open. Talk to me. Deal of choice here. What do you got for us?
I almost went under in the UFL. I do think that game is 42 right now. I think it goes under, Bear. But I'm not going to do that. I do Colin Morikawa to finish in the top 10 at plus 150. When you hear this, that number might move a little bit. He's playing some good golf. He's finished in the top 11 in his last 6 events. He's finished in the top 10 in 10 times this season. And I believe it's now 20-ish events. 14 events, top 10 finishes. So I like Morikawa here. As you mentioned, the important thing about this course is putting the ball in the fairway and then being able to bring it in with your irons. That's what he does well. So I'll go with Morikawa top 10 at the plus money.
I like that. It seems like a very good play. I think we will get a lot of cream in that top 10. I'll have some other thoughts in my column that's going to be up on foxsports.com. My best bet is Adrian Meronk, European player, plus 110 to miss the cut. He has played 6 major championships in the U.S. He has missed the cut in 5 of them, including both of his U.S. Opens. He's a guy that really struggles with. He can drive the ball pretty well, but he struggles in and around the green. I think that will be problematic for him this week. I would expect his U.S. Open championship struggles to continue. So Adrian Meronk at plus 110 to miss the cut here at Pinehurst. Jeff, had you ever heard the name Adrian Meronk before I just mentioned it?
I was gonna say, but I figured I would sound a little bit dumber than I do sometimes. That you could have made that name up, but I wouldn't know who that person is. So
it's so funny because there's a great database, the PGA Tour HQ. It's that database for the media members, and like you do a player query search, and you can type in like Scheffler is the last name, and there's Scotty Scheffler obviously, and then there's John Scheffler. It's like, okay, who the hell is John Scheffler? Everyone knows Scotty, the great John Scheffler. What can you tell me about him? And then you fire in another name like, Morikawa. And you see you have Colin Morikawa, and then there's a Masaki Morikawa, like, of course. And then you're doing like a Tony Finau search, and it's like you type in Finau, and you get Tony, and you get someone by the name of Gipper Finau. So it's like I would love to do like a feature on that one day, like the other Scheffler, the other Morikawa, the other Finau, just like the complete random names that one stumbles upon when they're mining for data. So yeah. The research can be fun, Jeff.
I think it's fun when you send me the research notes before we talk about Euros and Copa. I very much enjoyed the research you send there. I do enjoy one other thing that you do that I like. There's only 2 things, by the way. Just when you send me notes,
there are only 2 things that I do.
When you do your little nuggets on Twitter before every week of college football, those are very fun. They often are disparaging Oregon at some point in those tweets, but nonetheless, I still appreciate the research that you let off.
Well, as you know, I am the founding father of the Oregon Hate Club, which is far from the truth, by the way. I'm like one of the founding fathers, Herb Street and I, of like the Love Oregon fan club. But like we were on Oregon like mid 90s before anybody was.
Mid 90s.
I was like, they should have been in the national title game in 2001 when Nebraska went. Like they absolutely should have been in that game. When the first time we went to in '98, when we went to that UCLA Oregon game, fantastic. Yeah. Saladin McCullough.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, you'll be back this year, I'd imagine, on October 12th.
I'd hope so. Austin's one of my favorite places. People always say, like, where should I go to a game? And I said, it's a long trip. It's a hard trip, but once you're there, Eugene is awesome.
I was talking on the radio about this the other day. We'll end with this. Like that game on October 12th when Ohio State comes to Oregon, if everything is going, like I think we both expect it for both teams and everyone's healthy, and that will be the loudest game ever recorded in the history of college football. Like Autzen Stadium is going to make your ears hurt for days, your head hurt for days. I played a couple of those games when I was there with USC in 07, Oklahoma 06. It's going to be I want to go. I just don't know how to get there. As you mentioned, it's a long I know how to get there. It's just a long way to get there. And it's one of those things where it's like, if anyone's taking a private plane, Bear, from the East Coast to Eugene that weekend, hit me up. I'll be on the ride.
I've actually taken the private plane to Eugene. One of the funnier stories was that was the day on College Game Day when Corso dropped the F-bomb when game day was in Houston, and we left Houston like we were sitting there, and I'm packing up because literally we had to leave and get to the FBO to get on a plane because it was going to be a massively long flight where we weren't getting a tailwind, so it was going to be we had to stop in New Mexico for gas. So like I'm sitting there and I have my headset on, I'm packing up, and I can hear Lee doing his spiel. And yeah, and I just in my ear I hear F. I'm like, and all of a sudden I look up and I see Kirk's face is like in tears. Fowler's got his head like that, and I press I'm like saying to Kirk, I'm like, did he? And Kirk's like, so we get to Autzen, or we get to Eugene rather, and we get off the plane, and Phil Knight had just gotten in, so like he was talking to Kirk, and of course, and then we get to the stadium, and we walk on the field, and we're probably on like the 40, and Chip makes a beeline over to Kirk, and he's like, that Corso, and like I love Coach. And like it's all he and like Lane wanted to talk about.
Chip Kelly USC against USC. That would have been like, that had to be like obviously either 10, 11, 12, 13. It was one of those years. I forget what year.
Yeah, it was Lane. Pete was gone.
Yeah, so it would have been like 12, because 10 I think they went to USC in 10.
It would have been 12. Because Lane beat him. So it was the game that pretty much.
It wasn't 12, because 12 they lost to Stanford that year. That was the one loss. Yeah. No, maybe it was 11. I don't know.
It might have been 11. Whatever it was. Yeah, yeah. I think it was the game that cost him going to.
Oh no.
Yeah, in 12 they played in the Sugar Bowl, right? Orange Bowl, Sugar Orange. They beat the hell out of Kansas State, right?
That was Fiesta Bowl.
Fiesta Bowl. Okay.
Yeah, that was 12. That was 12. But that was because Stanford. No, that was 13. It doesn't matter. Oregon's played a lot of BCS bowl games. That's the point of this story.
Yes, correct. They all blend together. So I've ruined my story by blowing my. All I know is I remember in 12, or when Notre Dame was in the game against Alabama. I remember Oregon blowing out Kansas State in a bowl game. And
that was 12 after they lost to Stanford. People say that 12 team was the best one Kelly had. So
I would agree.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay. You talked about like ear ringing and mind blowing and numbing and such. I think we've put an end to this ear ringing and mind blowing and mind numbing conversation right now. People I think have tuned out by now. So if you want more of that, if you want more of the old stories and travel stories and going down Oregon memory lane, please remember to subscribe to Bear Bets Podcast wherever you get your podcast. Apple, Spotify, great YouTube show as well. Appreciate Stu for joining us earlier. Appreciate you listening. Remember to rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. And remember, people, the less you bet, the more you lose when you win.